Nick, our podcast, The Dictionnaire, is available for free on iTunes, Google Play, and other podcasting platforms. Don't forget to hit subscribe to receive new episodes every Wednesday. Follow me and my podcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at NICKAUN Podcast, or send your emails to NICKAUNpodcast@gmail.com. This episode is brought to you by Slam Disc, Brasserie Deux Frères, and bandpromo.ca.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more podcasting.
Hello, everybody. Oh, God, it's a beautiful day out. Finally, the rain is gone. We're here in a beautiful location on a beautiful wooden table, which we'll get into later about this beautiful wooden table. Today, my guest, by the way, it's an English episode on Nick, our podcast, as if you didn't already notice with the full English intro. But today, my guest is actually a friend of mine. I've known for a few years now, and this guy's, him and his band are just blowing up and are really, I'm so proud of these guys. They're doing such good work, and I'm just glad I got to hold them down for an interview. They're all over the place. We're talking to Jason from We Are Monroe. Yes, We Are Monroe.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Well, thank you for coming here. And thank you for letting me come to you and do this.
Thanks for coming to me. Thanks for asking me to do this.
Well, my pleasure.
Well, us, the band usually, but I was the only one available. But I hope that's good with you.
That's a good sign. If the guys are too busy, that's a good sign. Well, but for real, I really do mean it. You guys have just been doing such good work lately. You guys have been touring all over the place. Your record has come out. You guys are playing. Let's go listen to their featured single off this new record. Awesome stuff, of course. As usual, of course, you might have known We Are Monroe with their single Funeral, which dominated. I say dominate in the sense that I was driving randomly and I would hear it every 2 or 3 times. Funeral was everywhere on Montreal radio. CHOM, they just played the hell out of you guys. Which, if anything, if you're from Montreal and you're playing on CHOM, that's a pretty big deal. You've arrived.
Yeah, man. It's just one of these things that when you start making music, there's a couple of in Montreal. There's a couple of things that that are in the back of your mind. You have these sort of like little benchmark goals that like, oh man, wouldn't it be cool if and being in a rock band, it's CHOM is sort of like pinnacle.
It's pinnacle, and the worst part is that it's not, it hasn't always been. And I always say this to people. I go, when I was a kid, or at least when I was growing up, CHOM that's where you got to listen to Rush, April Wine, and once in a while something that was again, once in a while they'd have something a little bit crazy, maybe a Sunday night shows. But I guess in the last few years, they've really turned around and became this really good hub of alternative and very good local Montreal acts. We're talking about you guys, but we were talking earlier about like the Damn Truth and all those guys, Half Moon Run. You guys, what I'm really impressed, and this comes back to what I was saying earlier before this podcast, is that I've been following your career with We Are Monroe for a couple of years now. I'm trying to go back to when we met each other for the first time. It had to be Zvarange, I think. When was the first time we sat?
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
All I remember is that we sat down and we shot the shit for about 2 hours. Our girlfriends probably wonder what the hell are they up to. I never met the guy, but who's this guy? But the guy, super sweet. We had a great conversation about all things music and just got along, hit it off right away. So, and ever since, we've just been following each other's careers. We got to
play together.
Absolutely.
I still remember that night at campus. It was like, there's very few moments when you're on stage and things are about to happen and you don't know exactly what the hell that means. And you said it before, in this scene here in Montreal, like it's a lot smaller than we actually think it is, and when you get to meet people for the first time or play music with a new band for the first time, you could feel that something's going to happen, like a friendship, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember being on that bill, just kind of being really excited because I knew, like we had chatted before, and I just knew that, like, man, I'm going to be in touch with this guy I don't know why or how and all the, all of that shit.
Oh, absolutely.
But like, I just, it was cool. And then since then we've always been in touch.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when we met each other for the first time again, I know we introduced each other's projects a bit, and I hooked on right away because We Are Monroe as a band, what I hooked on right away is that, and I say this, and this is not pejorative, very current. And I say current in the sense that you guys harnessed on something, you guys found a way to do something that is your identity. You found a sound that belongs to you, but yet can exist and also really blends well with what's happening around you, which I think that is really important. I mean, in the music industry, in the sense that if someone mistakes you for someone that's an international star, that's good. That means that they consider you to be as good, if not better than that.
It's a good problem to have.
It's a good problem to have, and I mean that in the best sense possible, in the sense that you guys from an early on, when I first heard the band, and then of course when I saw you guys play with us, I'm like, yeah, they got it going, man. The tone is great. The songs are, they're energetic, they're dynamic. They're like, it had this, edge to it where it's like, you didn't know where the song was going, but it went somewhere and it took you on a good ride, and it was quick. I know that. This is kind of like insider baseball. That hi-hat, that driving hi-hat, that pulsating, the bass, everything, vocals. So yeah, I totally saw that at that time. So when the years have gone by and I see just things growing and getting bigger and bigger, I'm like, yeah. I saw that years ago, and now to see it happen and other people are catching on, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And if anything, you guys are wholly responsible for that. I mean, you guys work your asses off.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you put different people in a room together, just different things happen. Mm-hmm. And, when we started this project, our singer wasn't even in the picture. It was just the three of us. And the DNA of this band is really founded on the drum and bass, that sort of deep rhythm section. And
absolutely.
And as a guitar player, that's really a wonderful thing. A lot of guitar players, will shy away and, from that because it takes up a lot of room, mm-hmm. and it kind of diminishes, or it can be perceived as diminishing your role in the band or mm-hmm. what you want to do creatively. Mm-hmm. But there's been a deep sense of, here's the thing about this band. There's not a lot of ego. Mm-hmm. And our main thing, the MO of this band, is whatever works for the tune, And when you pair that up with like just who we are as musicians, where we come from, where we believe we want to go, and just the whole sort of, I really like the word identity. Yeah. Like the identity of a project is really steeped in, these. I mean, it's easy, and there's been a lot of references to it, but like, we all fucking love Joy Division. It's like, I know we don't sound like them. We're not like savages and in that sense of the word, but it's like, there's something about that raw, visceral kind of energy. Absolutely. That is a big sort of like platform for us to play on. Mm-hmm. And so for me as a guitar player, what's really cool is that I have a rhythm section that delivers on that kind of energy. And so I can play in whatever field I want on any given song, on any given vibe. I kind of have like carte blanche,
That's cool.
And so that's been a big thing about this band from the word go. Mm-hmm. And it was only after the fact that we added Pat on vocals, just because his whole skyrocket voice was just like, was such a great fit and sort of like juxtaposed perfectly because, a lot of people were kind of maybe, or not a lot of people, but I would say like there was expectations to maybe have like a lower, maybe like Interpol style mm-hmm. voicing, to the vocal melodies. But he comes in and he's got this range, obviously.
He can go high, but can drive like again in layman's term, high, middle, and low. When you're saying low, and like
tonally low.
Yeah. But when you go high, I mean, you're not screeching, but you're able to go and get some high notes. And we all know higher notes project further. It's that's why a lot of the best songs are sometimes in higher keys. But to have a singer that can actually kind of go through that and have that is a must. It's really cool.
Yeah, and so from there, it's just like, you put these four components in a room and you get what you get, you know?
Well, this is the thing, and then this is you brought on a good point, and I love doing this, and this is the fun about podcasting for me is be able to pick the brain of your guest, and you and me have no trouble talking to each other and having a good conversation, but I feel like it would be super pertinent to have some background, because like you're saying, the band has an identity. I think that, you know, again, I've met you and the other guys in the band, but today we're here with you. I'd love to get to know your identity and how that, in fact, blends into We Are Monroe. So, for example, on this podcast, I usually like to ask people, like, where are they from? So for you, Jason, where are you from? Where did this all start? You go as far back as you want.
Yeah, well, I'm from Eastern Ontario, and I started playing guitar when I was a kid. You know, I showed interest. I was like 10 years old, and I had been listening to, you know, like when you're a kid, whatever your folks are listening to, top 40 and, you know, Motown and, you know, whatever was on the radio at the time and stuff. And my dad, he was a picker, you know, just kind of like scratched away at home. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, there's something there. I don't know what it is. I love to draw. So I was always creative that way. But when I saw the guitar, it was like, there's something, you know, like if you build it, you know, they will come. If you build
it, they will come.
That was my sentiment from a very young age. And so I started playing guitars. You know, my folks, you know, they saw that I had an interest. So started taking lessons, conservatory, on and on and on. Really cool for sort of like having the bass, you know what I mean? So I kind of studied jazz and blues, and then I was in high school, and right away, excuse me.
Not a problem. By the way, we are having a great drink. We're having some beer. Grâce de Deux Frères Brasserie. They've been very nice to us. Here's the thing. This is the beauty of also this kind of format. We could sit around a table and shoot the shit with a beer and have a good time. So by all means, if you hear burps, flatulence, that might be a little more of a push. I don't know what we ate, but if you hear that, then that's really intense. But maybe a burping is not so bad.
But yeah, so when I was in high school, I had a buddy who sang, and he had like a decent singing voice, you know, and he knew that I play guitar, and he's like, dude, we got to do this like variety night thing, you know, and I'm like, I don't know, man, what do we want to do? Like, you going to write a song? Or it's like, no, we're going to play Aerosmith. I swear to God, no, like, but I was like, at the time, my musical knowledge did not go that far.
That's true. It's true. Okay.
You know, I was like, I don't know, I was like 13, maybe 14. No, 13. Yeah. And I'm like, what's Aerosmith? Who's Aerosmith? You know? And I got into Aerosmith because of this guy, Mark Richards, and I owe a lot to him because that was the first time I ever played on a stage.
Really? Do you remember what song?
It was Crying.
Crying, no shit. Yeah. All right.
No. And, you know, it was in front of the school, so it was like, whatever, 700-800 students. But, I mean, it's not like a show that we do now.
No, but I mean,
it's like a school thing. And it was like, and that was the moment. It was like, that was the defining, like, yes, I'll do this.
That's
any
awesome.
Day of the week, you know?
I love that.
Now, flash forward a couple of years, and I kind of like worked up the courage to like sing a little bit. I don't have a great singing voice, but I just kind of like the idea of maybe trying to do it. I was in high school, and there was more of these things kind of happening, these like, you know, little talent nights and stuff like that. And first time I ever sang on a stage, I did this, I did an Oasis track, Champagne Supernova.
Oh, I love that song.
This was the time, I don't know if you remember this, like MIDI was like the thing. So you could like program your tracks, you know, on a little MIDI player. And it would play like a fake little drum beat.
Absolutely.
And you could program the thing. And I had spent time doing that. And that's sort of like, so the Aerosmith thing, that was like, okay, I want to be on stage.
Intro to stage, yeah.
When I put that track together, because I couldn't find anybody like to play with me. I didn't know any drummers in my high school or anything like that.
Well, power to you to actually kind of think of that, to do that.
Yeah, and so, but when I played that song that night, I could still remember it, and like it was fucking yesterday. But that's when I knew I wanted a band. Mm-hmm. Like that's when the band thing came in, and then after that, it was just like little by little, I just kind of like chipped away at a lot of different things. I chipped away at like trying to play music with people. You know, I kind of chipped away at like discovering music. You know, like I was a late bloomer. You know, like I discovered Pearl Jam and Nirvana when I was at the end of high school, when everybody had already known them for like 5 years. You know, but that's what it was for me. And then when I moved to Montreal, then I had like a real opportunity to like really like grow some balls and like, am I really gonna figure some shit out?
Is this gonna happen? Yeah.
So I kind of started doing the little circuit, you know, like Crescent Street and all that sort of stuff. And then eventually I just started forming bands. I met enough people in the scene and started playing music in lofts and basements.
So I'm guessing you went to go see a lot of shows, or you're basically going around and seeing all these acts, meeting other musicians. I mean, that's, you know.
I mean, to this day, that's how it works. You know, I mean, you don't get to have people come to your show unless you go to other shows and you meet people and you know what I mean? Like I think there's like this preconceived notion that like, you know, you can still kind of avoid shit and do your thing and have it work out. It's not like that, you know, like, you know, when like the sort of like some of the festivals roll around, like the ones that are longer, like pop and things like that. And Montreal. And when that stuff rolls around, it's like, you won't, I mean, every band in the city is out watching every other band in the city.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And that's how it's done, you know? And I've been doing that for like, I moved here in 2000. I've been doing it for 17 years, you know? And it's like, that's truth. That's just what I've been doing, you know? And it gets tougher when you have like kids and stuff like that, but you still have to do it. You know?
If it's what you drives, I mean, in the sense that I feel that you and me have that passion for what we do in our music and our art and whatnot. And I have to compliment you on that point. You said this thing that I think people can really learn from. You have to go see it. You can't just like. I made a very big mistake as a very young when I started out in bands, and call it naivete, call it arrogance, whatever you want to call it. I refused to listen to local music in the sense that I didn't want to be tainted by what was around me. I felt like if I heard too much around me, it would just I would end up sounding like them. Thus, it wouldn't break through the noise. Yeah. Stupid. But however, with age and especially with the kamikaze and touring and doing all that stuff, you learn that half of the fun, and this comes back just to what we're doing now, is meeting other like-minded individuals that share that passion for their own project. And there's always something to learn. I've
always believed from a really young age, you know, I don't know if it was because of the type of music that was played or the variety of music that was played. I just kind of got into different music. Man, I love country music.
Oh,
like
dude.
You're like,
don't get me
who
started.
says
I love
that?
it.
Like, who utters these words, you know? But like, I love country, bluegrass. I mean, I love that stuff, man.
Oh, yeah.
And I discover stuff like all that. I just discovered Chris Stapleton. Man, what the hell? It's just like so incredible, you know?
No.
But it's like, so it's one of these things where like, I have this like really incredible thirst for discovering music and kind of being around it, you know? And, I mean, one of my favorite moments at a show is like 5 minutes before the lights go out, before the band starts. And I'm just like looking at the gear on stage. I'm looking at pedal boards and I'm like, oh shit, he's got the new JHS pedal or whatever. I mean, that's not a plug, but it's just like, that's what I love, you know, because I kind of think about it and I'm just like, man, these guys are about to have it, you know?
I think the conversation we had,
gals.
Actually, I think the first conversation we had, I think was regarding that, because I think at that point I had just finished recording my record with Gus Van Gogh in New York, or I think it was either coming out or was already out, and we were at Le Divan Orange. I think we were seeing a gig. There was a mutual gig we were going to see, and I remember you were just curious, like, hey, like I
heard
heard
that gig, by the way,
man.
Because I remember it.
You remember?
I remember like hanging out.
But what was the gig? I can't remember what the gig was. But so you're. I mean, of course, we introduced each other and everything, and yeah, you were just curious about the process of recording with someone like Gus. And of course, Gus in the Montreal scene, of course, has done amazing records for like Priestess, The Stills, and so on. You know, he just won a Juno, I think, just recently as well. Like a very well-renowned guy. And I got to work with him at a point in my career, which was it was amazing. I learned so much from that guy, and such a great spirit. Him and Warner, both of them are just amazing human beings, and I learned a lot from them. And that's the thing. So as a fan of his work, you were actually like, hey, I heard you got to work with him. How was that like? Now, I think
that might have been the first words out of my mouth when I met you.
Absolutely. But I was more than happy to talk about it because it was such a great experience. And, you know, when you meet people, like, I guess this is maybe a darker side of things. Of course, when you meet other bands, it is the nature of the business. People are trying to get ahead in their stuff. But, you know, when someone asks, you know, hey, you made that record, how was that? You know, it's almost like when you look at someone's house, you can go up to them and say, yeah, what's your contractor's number? Just give me your contractor's number. I want the same thing. Or someone goes, hey, you know, that's a good brickwork. How'd you do that? Yeah. It's a completely different, you know.
Well, it goes back to what we were saying before, man, before we did this, or before we started this, is like, I think there's just like, my view of it is, this is a community, you know, and I know a lot of people share that view. A lot of people don't. And that's maybe part of the thing, but it's like certain times you're going to find yourselves like literally like rubbing shoulders with, you know, folks that have more experience than you, more success than you, or not, or less, or whatever. At the end of the day, you know, you're all there for the same thing, you know, the love of music and playing and
absolutely,
and doing it, you know. And for me, like, you know, We Are Monroe is very, very much a live band. Like, yeah, we just finished this record and we're promoting it, and it's like really great, and we're super excited. Don't get me wrong, like really excited. You know, like making a first record is like you only have one.
You only have one first record. You have 10 years to write your first, and then it's 2 years after that.
But it's like we're of course ultimately really, really proud of it, and like super excited to be talking about it. But you know, we're very much a live band. That's sort of like in the core sort of like, again, DNA of what this band is all about. And so it's like you're gonna play a lot of shows, you're gonna meet a lot of different bands that are, again, a different sort of checkpoints in their own sort of trajectory, right? And it's like fucking everyone's doing the same thing, man. Everyone's just kind of like doing their thing. And I really like the idea, and I mentioned this before, it's like I really like the idea of just, you know, 3, 4, 5, however many you are in your band, just kind of like not laying low, but like just kind of keeping your head down, doing your thing, perfecting your craft, writing the best music you can, preparing to deliver the best show you can. And that's it, man. And if everyone else is doing the same thing, then everyone can kind of like tap each other on the back. Man,
absolutely.
That was great. And it's not about, you know, I'm not going to drop names because, you know, it's not.
By all means, drop them. I'll pick them up. Worst case, no problem.
No, but like, you know, I was saying before, you know, like in our building, you know, we have, you know, neighbors that have, you know, a really great track record, and they're just really nice, down to earth guys. Half Moon Run, Franklin Electric, and we're pals with The Damn Truth, of course. You know, they're obviously they've
broken the barrier. They've
tasted more success, like qualitative, you know,
and
quantitative as well. And it's just like, that's fine. But, you know, you cross paths with them in the hall, and you have like a quick chat with them, and they're literally just like doing the same thing as you are, just more people are paying attention.
Absolutely.
They're just perfecting their show. They're writing the best music they can. And that's it. That's really all. It's just more people are paying attention, more people are interested, but because of, that's just by way of like exposure.
Absolutely.
But at the core of it, and this is what everyone says, you know, Devin, John, all these guys, you know, Dave T from The Damn Truth, like Tom and Leela, they were at our show last week. It's just like everyone's saying the same thing, is that all they want is to write the best songs that they can and put on the best show that they can. Everything else, byproduct.
Absolutely.
Everything else is byproduct. And it's like when that's sort of that becomes sort of like your mindset, it's not like a competition. It's just like, it's a communal thing.
It's different. It's different flavor. You know, pizza. I like pizza with pepperoni. Some people like pizza with peppers.
I want to give a shout out to Adamo Pizza in St. Henry, because man, that shit is off the hook.
Oh man,
we have that pizza at least like.
All right, well, when we take a break,
once
we'll
every
order
couple
a pizza.
months.
But that's the thing, and you put your finger on a really good thing, and this is I feel this is really important because the background that I come from with Kamikaze, I was brought up in the pop punk world, the punk rock background.
Sure,
bands
we're talking about Jimmy Eat World before.
Oh my god, I love that band so goddamn much. I'm from that world, and I over the years love it. But I got to meet a lot of bands and a lot of different things, and unfortunately, in my style of music, and I say unfortunately just because it happens, the word pop's in it. Yeah. And what that forces you to do is kind of break through the noise in the sense that I'm not saying that the people that listen to that kind of music are lesser than any. It's not the thing. It's more that as a musician, not only do I have to be a musician, I have to also be a good marketer in a sense. You have to kind of market yourself in a certain way. Not that you have to fake anything. It's just that when I make music videos, and I make music videos because I love doing them, there is a conscious effort to make it look polished and legit, whereas maybe a project that is more audio centric, more definitely more, let's say, riff, anything that has to do more with the musicality of it can maybe take a little more risks, and the audience is prepared for it. The audience is wanting that. Yeah. And so what that forced me to kind of do is that, you meet these people, and unfortunately you meet some people that seem to spend all their time on that and not in the music. And but and people say to me all the time, like, oh, what the hell? I go, here's the thing. The ones that are good at it, or at least that are good musicians, that are great bands, they last. They stick around because they're in it for the right reasons. They're, like you said, they keep their head down, they perfect their art. Simple Plan, to give you a best example, one of the hardest working bands today, they're from here. These guys are always working, they're always touring, they're always busting their balls, meeting fans. And also, they're out there, fucking, they toured the planet. And why are they still here? Because they're fucking good at what they do, and they work very hard, and they don't lose their time with that bullshit. They just focus on what's important, the music and the fans. Yeah. But yet people don't give them sometimes the credit that maybe, unfortunately, let's say, and I say this in no way pejorative, let's say an Arcade Fire. They seen as and they are incredibly talented. I'm very proud that they, two of these people are from here and that they've gained amazing success. But it's like, you know what? Simple Plan and Arcade Fire deserve, in my opinion, the same respect in all aspects of being a band. They stuck around, they're touring, they're working, they're getting it done. So for me, that was something that tainted my view. Right. And I love the fact now, and this is maybe maturity talking, I get to meet a lot of people, and I get to really enjoy hearing different sides of a story, hearing different things that I was not expecting, and I guess like, if someone were to go, We Are Monroe and Kamikaze, they know each other, yeah, because you know why? We both play in bands that we love playing in, and we work really hard, and we find a mutual love in all things, not just music, but life in general. Yeah. That's okay, and that's how it should be. Yeah, for sure. And I think that's also speaking to something just even broader, and that's just loving it, loving what you do, and I mean, I'm really not the philosophical type for sure, but I think at a certain point, this is just my vision of it. Of course, I'm not at a point where I'm living exclusively off of music. But I think whenever you're afforded that chance, my interpretation of it, or my perception of it, is that you kind of like have that moment. And I don't know if it happens once or multiple times, or, every once in a while you kind of go. But I think you have at least one moment where you kind of go, man, I got to thank my lucky stars, man. Like, absolutely. Because 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, whatever, like, I love this idea of Arcade Fire, because to me, it's like a little engine that could, you know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. It's just like this story about, and it's not just them. There's a lot of bands that have gone through it, of course, but it's just like, I really love this romanticized idea that it's like you love what you do, you believe in yourself, and you just do it. You focus on your thing, and at the end of the day, you said it before, man, we're talking about bands before, it's like some people are going to love you, some people are going to hate you, some people are going to be indifferent, and that's just how it is. Yeah. And that's okay, because me as a fan of music, there's stuff that I don't like. I mean, I really enjoy a lot of music, but there's stuff that I don't like.
And so in that respect, it's like, you know, as a band, you're just kind of like, you're just kind of going along. And then at a certain point, because of this thing or that thing, certain opportunities, playing on this stage, signing with this label, you know, a booker books you at a showcase, like a million things. And all of a sudden it turns into like something else, and that snowballs. And then all of a sudden it's about to happen, or it's happening, or it has happened. And all of a sudden it's there, you know. It's just one of those things where it's like, you can never like fully, I think, really, like, I'm not talking about the pop machine that like pumps out artists every
No, absolutely.
We're I'm just talking about like legit bands that like really give it a go.
Four human beings that decide to play in a room together and figure some shit out.
Exactly. Like, I think there just comes a time, if stars align, that it, you know, it happens, and then you have that moment, like shit, something happened. And I'm not talking about like necessarily like, oh, we signed and now we're like headlining like Coachella, you know, or some shit like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just like talking about moments along the way that mean something, you know. And I think we know we're talking about before, like, it's just every once in a while you have that moment. You have that moment like, whoa. Like, a few years have gone by and like, look at this, you know, like, not just to come back to the band, but just like last week when we did Fairmount.
Absolutely, I was about to say,
it's just like, you know, we've been a band for a long time, and we've been playing shows for a long time here, elsewhere, you know, and it's like when you come home and you play to like 600 people, and you've never done that before, you know, you're always playing in front of 300 to 400 people, and then before that it was like 200 people, and before that it was 100, and then before that was 50. So when you've seen that sort of like growth, right, over like fucking not 5 years, but like since Funeral, maybe like 3 years.
Well, listen,
right? Like, when you've seen that growth over like a 3-year period, and it like ends up where it's like 600 people. I mean, in my sort of like child's mind, of course I wish there's going to be another step along the way that's going to be even more bigger. I love the Corona Theater. It's like right around the corner from
beautiful
here.
Theater. Yeah,
it's like I would definitely like want to headline that venue one day. But like just the Fairmount alone, like a few months ago, I saw Peter Hook and the Light sell out that venue,
and you're like, here I am doing,
and here I am. I'm like, I mean, we played that stage before, supporting other. You know,
but that was your night. That was the launch.
But this
that
was our
guys.
thing, and it was like really surreal. You know, it took me about 2 or 3 days to come down from that high. You know,
it's an amazing high, and I can compare it to Club Soda for me.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Oh, sorry. I really want to hear that story, but it's just
no. Please, you're my guest.
What it's like, what I mean is like, that's like one of these like moments. It's like a checkpoint. You know, it's like I remember. Because it just happened, but like I still remember, because a lot of times you play a show and it's like you don't remember anything, right? Like you come off stage, you're like, okay, what the hell? But I remember like we got called for an encore, and it was really cool. I came out on stage, and our singer, like, he kind of like stayed back, and he was kind of waiting for stuff to happen. And I came out, and people were just like going crazy. And I went, instead of going right to my, you know, stage right and getting my guitar ready and stuff, I went right to the front of the stage, and I just kind of had a moment. It felt like forever. It felt like 2 minutes, but it was probably literally like 3 seconds, right? And I literally like did a panoramic. I just like my head pivoted.
You scanned it, image,
and it's
panoramic,
like so the room is shallow, but it's super wide. So it's like a big scan, right? You just kind of like do this thing. And for the first time that night, I really sort of like took it all in, and I really went like, okay, this is crazy. Like this is the craziest thing we've ever done for ourselves, you know?
Ah, man,
it's like that's a moment.
Yeah,
that's a checkpoint. Now now what's next and all that sort of stuff. That's cool, but that's like a moment that like defines the band, like the growth of the band and like what we've done. You know?
You cherished it, because what I was going to say is that when I met you guys for the first time, at least in show-wise, when you guys opened for us for the first time,
right?
I saw the same thing. I saw that energy. I totally got where that was going. And for me, I mean, I'm not in the band, but I follow you guys, and when I see the steps, and I, as being myself in a band, I understand the hurdles and whatnot. So to see you guys do these amazing, like you said, these checkpoints, I recognize the awesomeness of those checkpoints. And as minute as it might seem, I know what they are. So when I saw them, I remember I texted you like, dude, I just heard you at 11 a.m. on CHOM.
Yeah.
That in itself is an amazing thing, and you got what I meant. At one point, you guys were doing, let's say, the M for Montreal. And I don't know if you guys did M for Montreal, but you guys did like a really well promoted gig with one of the festivals here downtown. I can't remember which one it was. You were doing, it was an event in conjunction with something. Christ, oh man.
Maybe M. We supported the Deers.
Yes, I think that was it. Okay, that was it.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, like, yes, those are the steps your band needs to take to get there.
I love this story, and I go back to it a lot in my mind just because it makes me feel really good.
Go right ahead.
Before we put out Funeral, we had only put out we were selling a demo at our shows. And so we had never really put out anything. And so at the time, our team that we had going on, there was this idea that Funeral was going to maybe get some rotation on CHOM. Mm-hmm. Walker had been playing every once in a while. Like
on his Sunday show, I think.
On his Sunday
night
show. Montreal Rocks. He played a couple of tracks. He would play he played everything on the demo basically, which was really cool. But we got wind that Picard might be interested to spin Funeral.
Oh, and
we were still in the studio. Like we were just, actually, you know what? Here's the thing. The session behind Funeral is like 2 days in the studio. We were, no, literally it was, and that wasn't even the plan. Okay. So we knew we wanted to work with Dave T at the Freak Shop, his studio with Derek. And so we said, listen, we don't know what we're doing. We just want to start recording because we want to figure out what we want to do. Like sometimes you have to start doing something to know where you're headed, And so our goal was like, let's just like book a weekend. We'll bang out a few tracks. We didn't even know what we wanted to do. And then maybe in a month, we'll book another weekend, bang out a few more tracks. And somewhere along the way, we knew that we'd probably find our way, an EP. Are we working on a record or whatever?
Like you didn't want to set that bar. Like, we're going to make a full-on record and spend 3 months on it. You're like, let's just go one thing at a time. And
let's just start. Let's just start something. And so I remember being in the studio just tracking, and we had decided like in the weeks prior that we would track Funeral, and then as other tracks we tracked Bitter Teeth, Tiger in a Box, which ended up being the B-side of Funeral. And so, we were in the studio just like doing some sort of rough mixing, and some people in the team were like, man, like Funeral, it's kicking, like it's something.
It's sticking out. It's sticking out of the bunch.
And so we're like, that's cool. Like, I mean, depending on what happens next with recording, and it'll find its place, But there was no preconceived notion of like, let's turn this into a single. Like zero.
Isn't that the irony of it?
It's beautiful. It's actually beautiful that way. And then we were like, okay, that's cool. And so in the meantime, we gigged, and we were planning like another weekend in the studio. And so then we found out that we're gonna actually, Funeral is gonna become a single. And then right away it was like, well, in what format, and all that sort of stuff sort of like became the question. The other 2 tracks that we recorded automatically became the B-side. And it was like, that's it. We have a package. It was like, there's a single, B-side, let's go, And Picard was super interested in Funeral. And then we found out it was eventually going to get some play. And so we went through the motions of like, doing the vinyl and just like getting the thing properly mastered. It was Maury here that did it. And so it was like, all right, cool. Like we got a track. It's cool. It might get some play.
Absolutely.
Here's the thing. So we had booked a show at Petit Campus. This was like a little bit after we did the thing with you guys. Yeah. And so we love that room. And we're just like, it's a great room. It's like a good size, And so we said, let's just do our little thing. We'll get as many people as we know.
Yeah, you launched,
And we said, but it wasn't a launch. It was more just like a party.
Okay.
Because we weren't releasing anything.
That's true. It was like a celebration of that step that was coming, or at least that was about to happen.
And then as we booked the room and we kind of like figured it all out, we're like, okay, so we were getting the vinyls. We're like, well, let's turn it into the vinyl launch. And then we figured like we had got confirmation that shortly thereafter CHOM would start playing the song. So we sold like we got really nervous because like 2 weeks out before the show, and we'd sold like 50 tickets online, and we're like, wow, this is not good. And then but then it turned out okay. We sold like another like 100 tickets at the door. We got Caravan from Quebec City to play with us. It was like a good.
Oh man,
it ended up being a really good night.
If it's 150 people in that room and you're with 2 bands, you're having a good night.
So here's the interesting part. Like a month later, CHOM goes into rotation on CHOM. Starts slow, like, once every couple days, then it builds, right? Like the whole cycle. And by the end of it, like they're spinning it like 4 times a day.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, at one point I was telling him, dude, I heard it like 3 times today. I was
like
insane.
Midnight, like what they're doing with Midnight Cruiser right now, right?
Yeah.
It was a slow thing, slow build, and now we're in the middle of it. And so I remember I remember all of us being like super excited, like, wow, like our song is playing 4 times on like one of the biggest stations in Canada. That's
absolutely,
that's nuts. And we were talking about gateways before, and we can talk about that. But it's like, wow, that's really something. That's like actually something.
That is currency in the world of music and business, in the sense that your band now, I say, quote unquote, exists in the eye of the public to the point where you are a force to be reckoned with. In the sense that someone like me that's insider a little bit industry or other bands, you can get wind of this, but when it crosses that threshold into the public's eye and you're now physically on these stations, you're playing, I mean, that is where it jumps. And this is what I was actually going to say earlier about that, is that when I did my first record, was the same kind of ordeal where my band wasn't supposed to exist. I'm an English guy singing in French, and no one thought it was going to work. The record label that signed us was like, we're the crazy ones going to actually take a chance on this. They put it out. It actually gets on radio, Energy, name it, all those stations, starts playing. So we get thrown into this. But the thing is that we had put out a record in kind of this like, we'll see what happens. Whatever. You know? And it took off. So we were kind of catching up with the record, trying to get, and we were 18 at the time. So like we're like trying to run up to this machine and whatnot. And when we started the band, we had played our first show ever first show downtown ever as teens at Club Soda at a Battle of the Bands. Right. Classic Montreal. Let's go play the Battle of the Bands, get the 10 hours of free recording time at the studio, blah, 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 whatever. I'm like 15 at this point, right? But it was really important.
Seems like such a good deal, doesn't it?
It does. It's at the time, but in the sense that we played that room at that age, and we're like, wow, it wouldn't be amazing if one day we were able to do this, but it was not 100. This room wasn't full with other people's friends. It was for us. So when that record came along, we actually ended the tour at Club Soda, and we filled up the floor. That's crazy. And you have to put yourself in my shoes. We're like 18, 19-year-olds. We were a French band. We're not supposed to exist, and I mean, no system. No production G, none of that shit. It's a fucking independent record label from Montreal that's pushing us. And it blew my mind. Like you said, that moment, I'm like, holy crap. And the craziness, and this is what I hope happens to you guys forever and ever. 10 years later, here I am doing my opening launch show. So I'm now opening my tour at Club Soda. Fucking filled up that floor up again, playing my 4th record. I was just like, it was like if I took on Facebook on this day. It was literally this on this day moment where like, holy shit, this is
4 years ago.
And it's like 10 years ago, whatever. It's just insane. So for you guys, I mean, you're a young band in the sense the band's been together for now a few years. I mean, I'm saying young band. I hate to be, it's not insulting in the sense that in the eye of the public, you guys are relatively new, but I'm telling you, man, it is just not even a matter of time. It's happening. So it's like things like with Funeral, Midnight Cruise, all these things are happening, and we'll talk about the gateway thing or gateway is that you guys put in the effort, you guys put in the work, you guys organically and sincerely worked on your craft. And this is what I want people to take the audience to take this really important. You guys, this whole time we never spoke about marketing campaigns. We didn't talk about social media. We didn't talk about fuck all of that. We talked about the craft of writing, the craft of studio, and then the environment around it adjusting to whatever's happening. Sure. And that's, to me, I think that's where it's at. And I think that's a big indicator of why your band is going where it's going. Yeah. Well, actually, that sort of ties in with the sort of the second part of that story is like, so Funeral starts getting that play, right? And it's like a good 8 months of like solid play.
And we're like, okay, cool. And at the end of that, we were like, okay, we're looking at booking more shows. We wanted to have a Montreal play again, and before heading out on the road, and so we booked the same room, Pitts Campus, classic, you know, just like. But now, 8 months later, song's been on the radio for like almost a year, and we booked the studio, or no, we booked the venue, sorry, almost day to the day, sorry, from like when before Funeral started playing on the radio. And so 8 months of radio play, like what that translated into. So instead of having 150 bodies in the room, there was 350 bodies in the room. Sold out, like busting fire code, people going out of the, and the best part, like cherry on top, is like, I remember my folks being at the show, and I remember being sort of like front of house, right? On that little platform, just hanging out with my dad.
Yeah, in the back, yeah.
So I'm hanging out with my dad, just as the room's filling up, or like, and the two of us are looking at each other like, what is this? What's going on, you know? And then I catch up with the rest of the guys in the band, and we're like, this is nuts. I can't even like get from front of house to the stage.
Like fight your way on the edge.
It was just like so crazy. And that was that's radio. That's just like what the influence of that was, you know? And so that's just work, you know, that's just hard work.
Well, the good music is why they come back. Because when you do a Fairmont and they're back, yeah, you have a single. But if the material's there and the fan base loves what you're giving them, they're going to want to come back every single time. Yeah,
and so that sort of speaks to a little bit to, you know, what sort of like the next thing, which is like, you know, just doing your thing, working on your music. And for us, I think a lot of it this time around, because we had never made a record. You know, we were on the coattails of this one single for like 2.5 years. You know, the approach, or just the whole thing about this record is like, yeah, we've been writing a lot of music for a lot of time, like a long time together, a lot of years. And when we finally said, and this was like last spring, and we said, okay, it's time to make a record.
It's time to make a record.
You know what I mean? Like we just felt it, you know, it's just like we had gotten so much out of Funeral touring wise, opportunities, you know, we gotten
it was a beautiful calling card.
We squeezed all the juice out of that lemon, you know? And it was just like, okay, it's time to make a record. Like we have a bunch of songs written and we're still writing and there's still new things to happen. Who do we want to surround ourselves with, you know? Like in terms of sort of giving the record a vibe.
Well, I was going to say, because,
we're talking about, you know, before we were talking about producers, right?
Yeah.
Like the role of a producer. I had never worked with a producer, so I don't know what the fuck that means. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, seriously.
You're absolutely right.
I had no idea what that, I'd worked in a studio, but there was never like a producer. It's like, we had our buddy Dave and he gave us some ideas and like we tracked.
If I can actually,
and then it went to mixing, and then he mixed. We weren't there, and then it went to Maury, and then he mastered it, and that's it. Producer to me is like is such a sort of like
an abstract concept.
An abstract concept, exactly.
For people that are listening, a producer, and I'm going to kind of I'll use my experience in this, is that when a band can self-produce. A lot of the biggest bands sometimes do self-produce. And when you're a producer in the format of a record is the architect of sound. It's the person that has to be able to take a step back and see how all the pieces of the puzzle fit together to make an image, which is a record, a song, and whatnot.
Yeah.
So a producer, when a band produces themselves, they're using their own knowledge and their own kind of relationship within each other to figure out that puzzle piece. Now, some would say that's where the best work comes from. Some say that's actually where the most intricate and hard to understand stuff. Some of the biggest records you've ever heard happened because of Bob Rock and Metallica, the Black Album. That's a meeting between producer and band at the right time, so on.
Yeah. So there's classic pairings that you're always going to hear of.
Absolutely.
Right? Lanois, U2. It's
exactly Lanois and U2 for the Joshua Tree. I mean, it's that. So for a band like ours or Kamikaze or We Are Monroe, a producer, for example, right now all the rage and pop punk is John Feldman. He's the one that did the last Blink record. He's the one everyone wants to work with. Now, what this guy does well, of course, gets great songwriters in a room and gets everyone working together, and it's a great collaborative project, but he's the architect of sound. Yeah. In your case, for a band like We Are Monroe, so much relies on the identity of we're talking about identity. You know, you want to make sure you work with the people that respect the identity of the band, know where it wants to go, but also will push them to go further than where they even think they can go. And that's, for people listening, a producer is supposed to do that. A producer is supposed to get the best out of that artist to take them where they need to go.
You just nailed it, man. It's like pushing boundaries and that sort of stuff.
Well, I think you guys were there at that point in your career. Well, I think it was time.
Here's okay. So here's the story. Here's the real story.
the real story behind the music VH1.
So, we did this tour with the Deers throughout Quebec. It was great.
Oh man! Again, another milestone in a career. You get to play with a great band.
You know, we got to see a band. Like, I can't speak for the others in the band because I know for a fact that they didn't really know that much about the Deers. Mm-hmm. You know, I know they knew of them and a few
the name,
tracks,
of course, yes, absolutely.
You know, and the big albums like No Cities and all that sort of stuff. But it's like when I moved to Montreal, like, you know, Montreal bands, it was like the Stills, the Deers, Wolf Parade, Arcade Fire. It was like that's what was like the big thing coming out of Montreal, you know. Mm-hmm. Anyways, so a couple of years ago, in 2015, we did this tour with them. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a big tour; it was like 7-8 dates, I think. But it was throughout Quebec. It was really great. We got to go to new markets and
absolutely play for places that you wouldn't have been, you know, if you just go on your own, you're playing for $50 in a crappy bar, no promoter. I mean, you might as well go with a band, right?
Yeah. And so, you know, first of all, you know, you get to see a band sort of like master class, you know, just like
how to be a band on the road,
super tight, you know, and just like, how to be a band on the road. That's a great way to put it. And so, you know, as these things tend to go, you connect with people in different ways. And, you know, Marie and Natalia, they're a couple and they have kids. And so they're kind of off doing their own thing. The guys in the rhythm section, they were kind of off doing their own thing. And then there's Patrick Creef, just kind of like hanging out. And so because of that, we got to hang out with him a lot, you know, before sets, after sets, we'd have a drink and all that sort of stuff. Super nice guy, super down to earth. Lots of stories from the heyday and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And, you know, the tour winds down and the last show is the Montreal show. That was the M for Montreal show. Like, just so fun. And it's kind of like a bummer that it's ending. And at that show, like backstage or something, Pat was like, listen, by the way, you know, I help, like I do work with bands from time to time, and if ever you guys are interested. And so a little bit of time went by, and it was like after that tour, and it was like, and then we got to last spring, and we're like, man, we should call this guy up. Like, we need good vibes, and you know, we're not really sure exactly what he can bring to the table, but
at this point, why not?
At this point, it's like it was such a good vibe. It was like, let's just try something, you know, let's try a few tracks. And so as it sort of like happened, we were kind of like trying to not branch out, but we're like just sort of like seeing what we can do with our sound, you know, like there was a certain like embedded sort of like always 4 on the floor, super like 140, 160 BPMs. This is like always sort of like the same thing. And so we're trying to like do different things, bring a little bit more of like a mood and atmosphere.
Groove.
And a groove. And we were like, you know what? Maybe this is the guy, you know? And as it turns out, it was, you know? So we worked on a few tracks, Midnight Cruiser, White Lights, and Mind Games, you know? And so just from that experience, we were just like, that kind of set the tone for us for the record, you know?
This was 2.0. This is We Are Monroe 2.0.
Yeah, we went from beta. Exactly. You know what I mean?
Beta to VHS. Baby.
Exactly, you know? And so we did like pre-prod with this guy for like a month and a half. He would come to our jam space.
Which is very, that's a luxury for a lot of people. To have the time to go through that, that's a luxury.
Yeah, and it was just like really casual. He would show up, we'd run through the songs, he'd make suggestions, and it was really about reframing the songs in a way that like highlighted the song itself overall, the different parts, again, like I said before, this band is not about ego. So it's not like I really wanted my guitar to be the number one feature of the song, you know? It was really about like, what's going to make the song be like the best that it can be. And so he made some suggestions, you know, and like these things go, you counter and you're like, yeah, but I don't like that. And like, what about this? But that's the role that he would push us in that way. And I like that, you know, like that sort of like challenging yourself. Mm-hmm. And I hear it all the time, you know, like I was reading a really great interview, Lana Del Rey, you know, she did one of her records. I think it was Ultraviolence with, Dan Auerbach, you know, and like, so it's really like this juxtaposition, you know, like we know Dan Auerbach from Black Keys, you know, it's just like blues, garage rock. And you're like, how is he producing this like pop record, you know, or like this, whatever record is like, but that's it. It's about challenging oneself, someone else. And so that's what sort of Pat brought to the table. And so when we were in the sessions for recording those tracks, it just kept going. It was like, okay, try this, try that. No, guys, like it can't suck, you know, and basically, you know, and then the rest of the record was like with Dave T, and we at that point, because the rest of the record, apart from those two tracks, is a lot more like what people may associate to us, like that sort of
the
like
sound that
we
rock,
you know?
Exactly.
And apart from maybe like the instrumental track on the record, which is a bit more subdued, but like everything else is really like sort of in your face. And Dave T sort of like, we share that in our blood with Dave T. In a way, he's like the fifth member of the band.
Yeah, he's like, he gets that that's the vibe, and let's not subdue it.
And he sort of like plays into that in his role, you know? And so, but yeah, that's it. That's like producing is not one thing, but it's like, it's always about like, what's going to make this band do the best that they can, you know?
I mean, it's an amazing, I guess that when you are a band, you have a chance to work with a producer. And again, not everyone is a producer. A producer could be a best friend that just has good musical taste.
Yeah,
of course, you try to work with someone that has the studio experience because of the technical aspect of it. But like for me, like I've been for the first time I started producing records, I'd say a few years ago, a little on off. I've produced my own, but I'd say more recently I've been hired now to produce other bands, French, English, whatever, I name it. And I mean, when they come see me, they come to me for a reason, and they go, we like your songwriting, we like the way you do, we like the way you think, and we find that we kind of have that same vibe, so we'd love to, you know, pick your brain at it. So when I work with a band, this is what you're saying, like you're you know, with your project or with the album, whatever, is that someone comes to you and goes, we want to go here or we want to go somewhere, and we're trying to find the best path. Now, there's no wrong path. But the person that you're working with is supposed to give you the tools to build and forge that path to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So one example I always give people, I go, listen to the first Arctic Monkey record and then listen to the second. The first Arctic Monkey record is one of my favorite records of all time. It's just unbelievable energy. Just, it's so unique, and it's, I don't know, just something about that record.
They came through town on that tour. They played Medley, which was a great room.
Oh, I love that. Rest in peace. But like,
it's just like, I'm thinking about that show right now. I'm just kind of going like, that there was a crazy energy, like just a crazy vibe. As much as like my favorite all time Arctic Monkeys record is Humbug. Like that's like to me is like where they kind of like the sort of like the worlds like perfectly collided.
Exactly.
You know? But yeah, that first record, like that just took everybody by surprise.
It took everyone by surprise, but there was a point where that record, like you and me, we know, we like, we search for it, but that second one afterwards, that's the one that got them in the arenas. But that was, and it was, you know what I mean? But it was a different production, but someone came in and said, okay, we're going to harness these things and build it and so on. And the record just blew up. So
like Brian Storm and
So for me, it's like, it's the same thing with producing. When let's say the last two bands I worked with are bands that I would say stylistically will gravitate around Kamikaze a bit, just in the terms of, you know, the rock, a little bit of pop in there and so on. But my job is not to tell them what to do necessarily, is to say, where do you want to go? And I'm going to try to challenge you to figure it out yourself. Now, of course, there's the technical aspect. I'm behind the mixing board. I'm miking stuff and all that and all. But as a producer, for me in that role, it is that. And for We Are Monroe, and this is why I was so happy when I saw the record being made and with the whole tour. Like, you guys did something really smart, which was, and you said when you started the story, you surrounded yourself with people that share the band's interests, but also respect the band's identity and want to see it go further. So, I mean, these people, whether it be bookers or shows or producers, they're working in your best interest. And from afar, and I say afar just in the sense that, you know, I'm looking at the project from the outside, you guys can do no wrong at this point, in the sense you're doing all the right things, and what you're doing is basically just focusing on the music and just being a great live band, taking the opportunities. And, you know, I think that's really a great, you see a lot. I mean, today everyone's in a band. There's bands everywhere. You throw a rock, you'll hit 3 bands. Yeah. But I think that the ones that break through the noise, the ones that kind of, you know, make their room or make their space and, you know, take charge, are the ones that, first of all, have great songs, because you don't have anything without the great songs, and that also spend their time on the right things, I believe, or at least the things that I believe matter if you're going to be an artist and you're going to write music. Like, you know, there's people that are Instagram stars, social influencers, there's people that are YouTubers, there's mediums all over the place. People write books, people write screenplays, whatever the medium is. You chose the medium of music. So it just seems normal to spend time on that medium. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you're a musician at heart, and you love the instrument you play and the songs you're doing. So I just think it's a great indicator of where you guys are going and how you guys are doing well. And again, when people are listening to this right now, I mean, your new record, White Light, has come out at this point, I believe, or at least it's out there. It's everywhere. I mean, you can get it, you know, I would say stores, but they don't exist anymore. But, you know, all the digital platforms, you know, streaming, iTunes, everywhere. You know, it's, how can I say it? I'm glad that you guys are at this point in your career, because I think that from now on, and it's not saying that before it wasn't, but I think that now, like we said, the placeholders and the checkpoints, well, man, sky's the fucking limit, because that's where I want to actually go before, because we have to take a short little break for my sponsor. But when we come back, though, this is actually how I want to go with this. I mean, I love the fact we got to touch so much great stuff, great insight to We Are Monroe, and you as a person, you as an artist. I want to know what's next for We Are Monroe, because the world's your oyster at this point. And we were talking about that earlier before we started the pod, about what's next and what usually is the path these bands take to get to the next level. So when we come back, we're going to talk about that. So we'll be right back.
Some rock and roll. Do your house guests flee in a fit of rage at the sound of your music collection? Stop messing around and head over to bandpromo.ca. What's bandpromo.ca? It's your one-stop shop for awesome band merchandise. Local, international, hell, even your buddy's band is on bandpromo.ca. You will find it all. Cassettes, CDs, vinyls, clothing, accessories, stickers, and even pins. The website is easy to use, shipping is quick, and more importantly, all the proceeds go right into the band's pockets. Use promo code NICK10 and receive 10% off your next order. Don't look anywhere else. Head over to bandpromo.ca. That's BAND promo.ca.
And we're back. All right. So last we spoke, we were talking about We Are Monroe. What is next for We Are Monroe? What is on the horizon? And also, I wanted to take time to talk about another passion of yours that we didn't really touch on, but I think it's really impressive. I was touching the table earlier about another passion of yours that you're really talented at. So before we get to that, We Are Monroe. Now, we were talking earlier about how Montreal, you guys have successfully, and I feel, made your mark and are continuing to do so. You guys are now part of the scenery, part of the tapestry. People know who you guys are. You guys are playing for the right people, playing the right shows. I'm guessing sky's the limit. So I'm thinking the rest of Canada, the States, Europe, the markets that would basically love to have you guys. So now you've conquered one. I'm guessing the next one is the TO and the Vancouvers, right?
Yeah. I mean, the beast, right? You gotta just kind of do it. No, but like, sincerely, is like Toronto. We've recently sort of taken up our love affair with Toronto again.
Which is fine. That's okay.
You know, it's a few years ago, we kind of had some interesting things, like just a few shows that kind of like really turned out to be really cool. And then whatever, XYZ happens, life and all that sort of stuff. And we didn't go back for like 3 years. Mm-hmm. Last year, some contacts in our team got us into a really interesting slot at CMW. We played the Bovine.
Oh my God, the Bovine.
Yeah. I had never set foot in the Bovine. I always walked past it like...
I got a good Bovine story if you want to hear it, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll do that. But essentially, the slot was playing with Tommy Stinson of The Replacements.
No way.
sandwiched with a Toronto band called The Beaches, all girl rock band,
I've
like
heard of
really
that, yeah.
crazy, great energy, just a great night. And that sort of like rekindled the thing with Toronto. And we didn't get a chance to go back because of the record, like making the record and just getting everything done. But we were just there not too long ago for CMW again. Great night. We're going to be back there like maybe 3 or 4 times before the end of the year.
Good.
And just kind of like, trying to develop those relationships. We talked about the Edge before.
Yeah.
That's already something that's in our purview. So it's like there's something about that market that's really interesting. But
what about New York?
Well,
because here's the thing, Colorado, a band that Gus produced,
Yeah.
I love that band. I got to catch him at the Mercury Lounge in New York City. The band's from Ottawa, they're a Canadian band, and I got to see him in New York, and I'm like, this is totally doable. Like, wouldn't We Are Monroe be able to just drive down the coast and just kind of do maybe a Boston or a New York, kind of get in there?
yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know the logistics behind something like that, visas and all that sort of stuff.
Like, just show up. You're like, hey, we're a bunch of guys, and we're just going to go jam somewhere.
Yeah.
You just kind of...
Yeah, I mean... I think when you hear like sort of the recent stories with South by, Canadian bands that have their visas ready to go and and everything's like itineraries are lined up and still get turned away at the borders, even though everything's legit. It's like, there's something about the US right now that's like, we totally want to, and it's definitely sort of like in the long play. Because who doesn't want to go to California, right? Like, seriously. No, just
please.
Right? But I think for us, something that's definitely more in our sort of like, not long-term, but mid-term sort of like doable is like UK.
Yes.
Like
oh my God. Yes.
So even though like the rest of Canada is definitely like another big thing that we want to do, we're like, for some reason we're just really excited about the Maritimes and even going out west is like, even though like the drives are insane and all that sort of stuff, I've driven across the country myself before. It's just like, okay, it's flat for a long time, but it's like, these are all things that that are part of like the long term. But yeah, I mean, we actually, the thing about Europe is that we already have some contacts over there that are tied in with the festival circuit. And so like early summer, like late spring, early summer next year, like May, June, something like that, we're already sort of like trying to figure out if there's like a few festival plays for us. And, and then while we're there, sort of like maybe extend the trip and hook up with local acts and all that sort of stuff. So that's something that's a bit more like tangible.
Oh yeah, it's in the near future in the sense that there's actual like there's a groundwork for it and you guys are working towards it.
I mean, we know plenty of bands like personally that like, that sorted out all the visa stuff for the US. Like we have pals in Atsuko Chiba, sort of like a noise experimental rock heavy band, but they tour heavily and consistently in the US. And it's one of those things where it's like, you got to do the work. And then once you're in, you're kind of in, and then you can kind of do it. So it's definitely in the cards. I'm not gonna, I won't say that it's not, because for sure. Like I said before, like, there's always this, like, I would love to tour Southern US while it's winter here. You know what I mean? Like that sounds like a dream. But yeah, like we can't disregard the fact that it would be equally as interesting to go to Europe.
Well, having done it myself twice now with Kamikaze, and it's a great trip, but it, like you said, you're talking about festival circuit. That I believe is a really smart way of doing it. Like we kind of did it a little bit of ass backwards in the sense we took the punk rock route of doing things, which is like, you're playing 21 shows in 21 days. You're playing, playing every night, playing with band, local. Like it's a very DIY. You're, I mean, again, fans at every show, cool, everything's awesome. But for you guys, I feel like, you do a couple of fucking awesome festivals, man, and you're playing with the right bands in these right cities and stuff, like sky's the limit. In the sense that I could totally see We Are Monroe play, a fucking, the Reading Festival, and maybe not a headline, but it's in the bottom tier or whatever. Or you guys could totally play, name it, the room, Manchester, and anywhere you want to go. I could
Don't
totally
make my
see
head
it.
any bigger than it is, man.
No, but I say that, and it's what I was saying earlier about current. Your band, like there's this station out in Australia called Triple J. It breaks a lot of bands, a lot of alternative bands, and that end up touring Australia. We're talking about Half Moon Run and all that, all that jazz. So for a band like I said, current, and I don't mean that pejoratively, We Are Monroe, I believe, because you guys are successfully riding that wave in a very cool way, in a very sincere and authentic way. Those doors are now. When I talk about my band, it's like a pop punk band, so it's niche, and it has the word pop in it, but not everyone enjoys it, so it's a lot harder to kind of slide that in, and you have to go to like specific festivals, specific things. But I have a feeling like We Are Monroe, if you're in the mood for alternative music in general, it fits. You can play Nishaga as you can play a heavy, you can play a blues fest, you can play an FEQ. You have that chameleon-esque ability to do that, and it's not pejorative. I mean that in the best sense, that you are capable of playing with bands of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes from we listen to a lot of different music in this band. There's something about what's going on musically. You look at festival lineups, even what's come out this year for Osheaga, Way Home, Lollapalooza, all these festivals, all the really cool festivals. And you're kind of going like, I hear it too. Yeah, I know. And it's not like, oh, because I want my band to play Coachella. Like, fuck, yeah, duh. But I'm saying it more like, I do feel, and I think maybe this is like just a reflection, but like, as things have evolved and we've really developed a proper fan base, it's like, it's clear now that like, it's not just our aunts and uncles that are showing up at gigs.
People that legitimately want to hear what you guys have to say.
And it's like that in and of itself, sort of like, like I said before, it's always important to just kind of do your own thing and not pay attention to the noise and all that sort of stuff. But at a certain point, like you're playing shows in front of people, you want a certain amount of like attention, whether you want to admit it or not. And when you have actual fans as opposed to your third cousin, it's like it reaffirms things. It just kind of like it kind of comes in and acts as like that little bit of like that little boost that you need, to kind of say like, yeah, people can be into this. And so when you think about sort of, oh man, I would definitely like, I haven't listened to the record like basically since we got the masters, and I try not to, because I'm really curious as to like how it's going to sound to my ears in 6 months, in a year. Okay. I mean, we play it all the time. Yeah, so that's different. Yeah, but like, I really want to have that experience of like not listening to it, because listening to it and playing it is two different things, of course. But I want to have that experience of going like, man, if I put this record on after I've been listening to Foles or Father John Misty or The National or whatever, like, is this something that like that's relevant, like if I can, and honestly, like that's exactly the exercise that I sort of like wanted to avoid. But like when we got the masters back from England, it was like because we were lucky enough to score John Davis on this one, it was like I put on some of his other records. Like I have like just right there, like John Savages and The Damn Truth, and I have a Lana Del Rey, and so I've sort of put the record on sort of in scale with some of those artists, and it was like, yeah, like I mean, it's like a confident thing, but it's like, yeah, like I would totally. It's
a friend of mine, one of my guests on this podcast works for Énergie in Quebec City, and she had this really great way of putting it in terms of what bands need to know in terms of when they're putting themselves out there. You go, if you think you deserve to be on the radio, take a song that's on the radio, put yours, then another song after that that's on the radio. If it doesn't fit, if it sounds fucking weird, then you're not ready.
Yeah.
If it sounds about right, and be honest, if it sounds like it belongs in that playlist, then it probably does. And then that's when things happen. And that's why, like I said earlier about you guys having that sound, when I hear you on CHOM, I know it's you guys because I know you guys, but it works. It fits. It's up there in terms of quality of production and writing and all that. Yeah. So again, to kind of button up all this in terms about We Are Monroe, and I guess this is what it comes down to. If I can give you guys a great compliment, is the fact that you guys are mature. And I say this in a very mature in the sense that, as you said earlier, you work for the song, not self. Whatever drives the band, it's all about putting in the hours and realizing that maybe you're not there yet, and it's okay, and you have to take your time, and that's patience. That's something that's not given to everybody, young or old. Yeah. And also, when you look at the future, you are ambitious yet also terre à terre. You also know that there's a road that's ahead of you that needs to be traveled. So I say mature in the sense that if one thing people can take away from this entire podcast with Jason today is We Are Monroe in terms of the band. I mean, you can check them out on every platform possible that's out there, the Bandcamps, the streamings, the Apple Music, the Google Play, name it, their music's out there to listen. But when you hear it, think of that too. Think about this person making the music, the band, Jason, everybody, the effort that's put into it. And the effort of making a band and a sound and a music that means something to them and that they hope means something to you. And I think that's a really cool thing. And I think that's something that all bands should aspire to do, big or small. And the fact that you guys are doing it so early on in the game is an indicator about what are things to come.
Yeah, I agree. No, that's it's a really good way to sort of like wrap it. And it's like there's, been playing music for a long time. As a kid, teenager, going through a lot of different projects, like over the years, and kind of like figuring out what it is to write music, and there's something about this project that, I have to say, and sometimes it's always really interesting to me, like when I listen to podcasts or listen to interviews with bands or whatever, I always really like that moment, like that underdog moment where it's like, it came so close to never happening. I love that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not to play into like that sort of like drama, but there was definitely a time just before the funeral sessions where we kind of almost hung it up, it was just kind of like, there was a lot of like weird energies, weird vibes, not like we hated each other or anything like that.
The outside environment was
but it's just
affecting.
kind of like, there was all these like, what's next for you guys? Like, shouldn't you be like more known or like put out more music and stuff like that? And like, shouldn't you be gigging more and all this like weird, like, and I think what happened is that we were internalizing it way like past the point of no return. And yeah, there was definitely a good like 6 month to year period like before, hooking up with Dave, where it was just kind of like, what the fuck is going on
What's
here?
going on?
And then it just kind of like naturally, like we met Dave and we kind of like had this really like cool little moment where it was like, well, maybe this would be like a good way to turn the page, we were at that old building behind the Bell Center.
Yeah, they tore down, yeah.
So that's where we were at. And so we moved from there to our current space. And then as soon as we kind of got in there, like it just kind of like changed the whole vibe when we saw who was in the building. Again, it's not like to name drop or anything like that. But
but it definitely changes.
When you're kind of like surrounded by like things that are cool in music that you or that you enjoy in music, that you think is cool in music for yourself, and you're like in that environment, all of a sudden it put us back on a track different than what we were on, but it kind of like set the tone for like wanting to keep doing it,
That's awesome, man.
But it's like, yeah, I think you have those moments where once in a while you have to like really look at yourself in the mirror and kind of go, why am I doing this? Like, what is the point,
What's the point, yeah.
And then collectively you have to like regroup and you have to say like, are we doing this? And if so, why are we doing this and how are we going to do this? And all of those kind of questions that you sort of like go through as a band, like, because the thing is, it's not just one person. It's like multiple people that have to sort of like see eye to eye on things. And it's okay sometimes to have disagreement. Like, talking about writing, for example, it's just like, yeah, of course, there's always going to be moments where like you're going to concede your point because, again, it's not an ego thing. You have to try to like see it from everybody's point of view, all that sort of stuff. But it's like at the end of the day, the tried and true thing about this particular project is that we always felt that what we were doing was bigger than who we were.
That's a really good way to put it.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like even from the early days playing Barfly, but like having like this raw energy just kind of like overtake us. It was just kind of like, wow, this is like powerful. Like there's 5 people here. Who cares? But it's like, it's so powerful. We're feeling it. Playing Lesko in front of 20 people is like, we're feeling it. And that has been sort of like the driving force of this band. Always having that thing that's bigger than us, you know? That's what's kept us in the game, you know?
Awesome,
and always really interested to find out what's next, you know, like, and that's the thing.
Well, I guess to close this up, because I mean, to button all this up, there's another thing I want to talk about before we close this podcast up. Besides being an artist in terms of music and writing and with We Are Monroe, you're also a carpenter. You also work with wood. You also work, you're an artisan. Tell me more about that.
Yeah. So, for such a long time, like any other musician, like that has to have a job. I always had like desk jobs, you know, like, and so I just kind of got fed up of it. And I, you know, talking about my dad before, but just like, you know, we've always been buddies, you know, and he kind of came up in that world, like just manual labor, working with his hands. He was always really good with tools and stuff like that. And growing up, he always had like, in some way, shape, or form, he always had like a little wood shop, and he would always like work on little projects, you know. And so a few years ago, maybe like I'd say about 5 years ago, I had this job, and I was just like, I'm not feeling this.
I'm not feeling this at all.
Like, as much as I'd love to just like do different things in music, like, which I always actively try to do.
Yeah,
we were talking about that before.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to do sessions and things like that. And by the way, if anyone's listening and needs a guitar player, totally available. But like, I always had this like creative thing. Like, I always have to like, I always like the output, right?
Yeah.
Content.
Absolutely.
And so a few years ago, I quit that job, and I was just like, you know what, I got to figure something out where I'm really happy about the work that I can do. And in the middle of all that, I just kind of was hanging out with my dad a lot at that point. And as sort of it played out, like we were hanging out in his shop, and he was building a few things, and he's like, it just kind of came naturally one day. He's like, oh, pass me that tool, or hold this, you know, this plank of wood, or whatever, you know. And all of a sudden, I just kind of was like, this looks cool. Just hanging out in a shop all day, but I was totally scared of machines, like a table saw,
Power tools, yeah.
like that'll just like
That can take an arm off.
That could take a lot of, yeah. And so you know, I figured if I wanted to really like explore woodworking, I would take a course, and that's what I did. So I took I took a year off of like any job, and I just did that full time. And then when I came out of it, like I just sort of like started doing projects for friends and families, and that's it. That's like,
wow.
I do that. And like, I kind of have a really like yin yang relationship between music and that. Like I was reading this article once about Jeff Beck, which I love. And in his spare time, he like rebuilds like vintage cars. He loves like mechanics.
That's great.
And so to me, it's that kind of like, there's like, if you're a creative person, you're always going to find the means. And the truth is that like, even though I would probably, you know, concede time in the shop to like time in the studio, or like, you know, helping other musicians or whatever, it's like, I'm a creative person. I love that outlet. And it's just like, it's one that like I really enjoy. I love the sort of the craftsmanship behind it. So like talking about this table, for example, that we're at, it's like, yeah, I built this table. It's like, it's really cool. And,
Nice
but to me, it's just like, it's a lot like songwriting, you know what I mean? Where it's like writing the song in a way is a lot is
more rewarding.
Is
than
more
me.
rewarding than the end result. You know,
I believe you. I definitely
You know what I
have.
mean?
Well, I mean, you're talking about, extra stuff. I mean, of course, this podcast is a complimentary to what I do
Exactly.
with Kamikaze. I also, for people that, I'm a literature major and from university. I've written screenplays.
Yeah.
Pilots. I've, we're all writing the book of our lives, but I've actually started writing as well for that. I mean, you figure out things that you like and you just try to, make hay while the sun shines. So I totally dig that. And that's why I want to make sure that we plug that before we conclude this podcast, because I think it's really a great indicator again of who you are as a person, as an artist, to have that extra tool, extra hour in your quiver and so on.
Yeah.
So for people listening, once again, you're listening to Nick on our podcast at Dixon. New episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, and all the digital platforms. Make sure to check out We Are Monroe again on Apple Music, Spotify, Bandcamp, anywhere that you've got music. We Are Monroe. Check them out. Tour dates on their website as well, on their Facebook page. Add them, like them, follow them. They'll be in a city near you, most likely sooner than later. So once again, Jay, I want to thank you so much.
Man, I want to thank you, and I want to say congratulations. This is really, I think in Montreal, I think this is like one of the coolest ideas I've heard in a long time.
Oh man, thank you.
Yeah.
Fuck, nice. Thank you, man.
I really hope that it just like it goes places for you, man, because it's like
No, thanks,
I really
man.
love, like we were talking about this before, but this format is like
That's the best.
it's the best.
I love
it's
it.
Absolute best.
In great company, it's even better.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's really like we talk. I know I plugged it before, like Mark Maron and stuff. It's just like I love the conversation piece.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can do interviews till the cows come home, but it's like,
Well, this is by far, and I think we're rounding up as probably one of the longest
Sorry,
I've done. No,
I'm a chatter-
but
I'm a chatterbox.
By all means, I love it. That's why. So, I mean, again, we can have a part 2, part 3. God, let's reconvene in a year when We Are Monroe is headlining Coachella, and then we'll have more to talk about at that point. But then, once again, a big thank you, Jay, and again, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you guys again next week. Every Wednesday's news episodes, and send your questions, send your reactions, everything to Nick on our podcast, NICKAUN podcast @gmail.com, or on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. NICKAUN podcast. So once again, Jay, thank you so much for inviting me to your beautiful home.
Thanks,
and
man.
we'll see each other soon on stage or on tour, anywhere for a beer soon.
absolutely. Cheers.